your English grammar. And as usual, if you watch a lesson through, I've got some questions to help you to test your skills and practice what you learned during the lesson, which is super important. So let's dive in. So like I said, let's dive straight in. Why do we use the past continuous? We use it to say that the action in progress at a precise moment in the past. What we're doing at 3 p.m. on Friday? I was washing my hair. Now, this tense is often used with the past simple tense to talk about two past actions that took place at the same time. Like I washed my hair and hot water ran out. So that longer action goes in the past continuous tense and it's interrupted by the short action in the past simple. I was washing my hair when the water ran out. You're probably quite familiar with the structure of a past continuous sentences in English, right? In all continuous tenses, the auxiliary verb be is essential, right? In the past continuous, our auxiliary verb be becomes was or were, depending on the subject. I was running, they were running. Easy, right? Now, let's compare that with the past perfect continuous. It's similar to the past continuous, but rather than helping us to show two actions taking place at the same time in the past, we can use the past perfect continuous to show that one action was in progress before a second action started. I had been doing the dishes when John arrived. I was doing the dishes, but I stopped doing them when John arrived, and I hadn't finished doing it yet. The action is complete. So when John leaves, I'll probably have to finish doing the dishes, right? I'll go back to that action. Let's look at the structure for a minute because it's obviously a different past continuous sentence, isn't it? The past perfect continuous sentence has different auxiliary verbs. Can you see them? Had and been, followed by a main verb ing, which is common for all continuous tenses. I had been doing the dishes. They had been waiting for a long time. She had been feeling unwell since lunchtime. And of course, for negative sentence, we just add not. I had not been doing the dishes. I hadn't been doing the dishes. I'm really just giving you a quick overview here because what we really want to focus on today is when to use the past continuous and when to use the past perfect continuous. We want to focus on the difference. If you want to study and practice a bit more with perfect continuousness, and full lesson dedicated to it, it's right up there. When it comes to grammar, I've got your back, don't I? I have a whole grammar playlist so that we're bookmarking it so that in order to, when you need to practice, right? So let's compare them. Taken at face value, the past continuous and the past perfect continuous do seem pretty similar. They both describe an ongoing or continuing action. They both describe the action that took place in the past, and they both are used in combination with the simple past. But they aren't the same. There are two main differences between the past continuous and the past perfect continuous that I want to share with you today. And the first one is the order of the event that in past in relation to each other. The past continuous expresses an action in progress at a particular moment in the past. I was studying when the doorbell rang. So let's say that these two actions happened yesterday at 3 p.m. I was in the process of studying at that moment. At the same time, the doorbell rang at 3 p.m. yesterday. I was studying when the doorbell rang. We use when to join these two actions, which shows us two actions took place at the same time, right? And the tenses give us an information about the nature of the actions. Studying is a long action. It's a continuing action. The doorbell ring, it's short action, right? Both actions happen at the same time, but one action, the short one, interrupts the other one. The difference with the past perfect is that expression in progress before a particular moment in the past. I had been studying when you arrived. So here, I spent some time studying and wasn't finished yet, but later on some point, we'll still use the conjunction when to join these actions that we can also use the conjunction before. I had been studying before you arrived. Using when emphasizes the action was unfinished when the second action takes place. But using before emphasizes that first action started at an earlier point in time, the second action. Okay, but was I doing when the doorbell rang? What was I studying? Well, actually, we don't know. I might have been studying about at that moment, or I might not. Whether or not whether I was studying or doorbell rang is not really important, and this is big difference compared to the past continuous. What's important in this sentence is that studying had started and it wasn't finished yet. So even if it was necessarily in progress at the exact moment that the short action happened when the doorbell rang, it's in progress, right? It isn't complete. Okay, so listen up because what I'm about to tell you is really important. The idea of action in progress in the past perfect continuous is a little bit abstract. By abstract, I mean that progression of that action can go on for many hours or days or even years. So using this tense means that it isn't clear the action was actually happening at that exact moment. I'm gonna give you one more example to show you what I mean. Julia is cooking when the guest arrived. Julia had been cooking for hours when the guest arrived. So in this sentence, Julia had stopped what she's doing to go to the door and let her guest in, right? The arrival of her guest interrupted her and interrupted her cooking. But in this sentence here, Julia had started cooking probably long before the guest arrived. The food wasn't ready when they did arrive. The cooking is incomplete. So whether or not she was actually in the process of cooking when her guest arrived at the door doesn't really matter. It's not important. The fact is that cooking was incomplete, so they didn't have to. So that is while the past continuous shows us a long continuous action that is in progress at the specific moment in the past. But the past continuous shows us a long continuous and continuing action that isn't necessarily in progress at the specific moment in the past. But the consequence that the action it has an impact on the specific moment in the past. The impact is that her guests are there, but there's no food to eat. She hasn't finished it, right? That is impact on that particular moment. Do you see the difference there? Excellent. I'm gonna come back that book compared to consequence a little later on in this video. But first, I want to point out that when we compare the past continuous and the past perfect continuous, it is really important to pay attention to how we talk about the time in our sentence. If you pay close attention, you might have noticed something that I used in the past continuous sentence, but not in the past continuous ones. Julia was cooking when the telephone rang. Julia had been cooking for several hours, but the meal wasn't ready when her guest. Can you see talking about? It's a time reference. So in the past perfect continuous, we often specify the duration or period of time, of course using our adverbs for and since, very common in the perfect tense. And with this the duration of the length of that action. She had been studying since 7 a.m. Not she was studying since 7 a.m. That's incorrect. They had been cooking 4 hours, not they were cooking 4 hours. If you want to reference time in the past continuous, you've got to be precise because it's a tense that shows us an action in progress at a specific moment in the past. at 3 p.m. one night when Julia was cooking. It's really specific, right? Are you with me? Great. The other way we can compare these tenses is when we use to express action and consequence. The both continuous and the past perfect continuous can be used to give some context and express the result of an action. So that means that one action informs the state of another action. The past continuous action, like it was raining, informs state of state, you can say it was raining, so the ground was wet. So the result of the rain, consequence of the rain, is that the ground was wet. Logical, right? Why was the ground wet? Because the raindrops were falling at the exact moment in the time and they were making ground wet. Okay, so what changes when you to perfect continuous tense? It had been raining, so the ground was wet. Is it still raining? The rain has stopped. At the consequence of the rain, the wet ground, that's important. That explains why the ground was wet. I'll show you one more example. She was working hard and the presentation was almost finished. So the action is hard work, right? It's action and still ongoing. It's still in progress. The result of the hard work is that the presentation is almost finished, but not quite. But compared to she had been working there hard, very hard, the presentation is finally, and the action is the same, the hard work, but this time the action is complete. The work is finished, right? And the result of that completed work is that the presentation is done. Okay, now it's your turn to